You for joining us for another FPSA webinar Wednesday. We appreciate you spending some time with us today. I'm Matt O'Shea. I am the publisher of Dairy Processing. Today's discussion is going to be on From Legacy to Leading Edge, Practical Dairy Plant Modernization Strategies. It's a topic that continues to grow in importance across the dairy industry between increasing demand for higher protein products, labor challenges, evolving food safety expectations, sustainability goals, and the need for greater operational efficiency. Many dairy companies are evaluating what modernization really looks like inside their plants. What we're looking for today, and this won't be a slide-heavy technical presentation, this is intended to be a practical conversation with leaders who are actively involved in modernization across dairy operations. We'll talk about automation, engineering, and manufacturing transformation. We'll talk about what's driving investment decisions, where companies are focusing modernization efforts, what technologies are creating operational impact, and some of the real-world implementation lessons that are learned along the way. As always, we encourage audience participation, so please feel free to submit questions using the chat or the Q&A feature, and we'll work those questions in. So we have a terrific panel joining us today, so let's get started. If we could have some quick introductions, just your role, your company, and the perspective that you bring to modernization efforts in dairy, that would be great. So we'll start with Hugh.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, wherever you are. I'm the COO of Cayuga Milk Ingredients here in Auburn, New York. I've been working in the manufacturing industry for almost 30 years. Formerly worked with Chobani for many years, and then prior to that, I worked with some of the large engineering companies, global engineering companies, GEA, APV, and then some large integration companies. Looking forward to talking to you all today.
Thank you, Hugh. And Crystal.
Hi, everyone. Hello from Raleigh, North Carolina, Crystal Christescu. I am in automation and digital business development for the US and Canada at Tetra Pak. I work with customers on their digital transformation journeys, how to set their and achieve their targets, address the pains, improve the bottom line. I've worked 15 plus years in manufacturing and industrial automation in management, operational excellence, and business transformation. And then also, don't be surprised if I drop a few dad jokes.
Thanks, Crystal. And you, Todd.
Hey everyone, Todd Gillum. I am the industry leader for consumer packaged goods for Rockwell Automation. I have been with Rockwell a total of about 13 years, and in the industry itself, nearly 40 years. And dairy is one of our largest segments in food and beverage. And in my role, I meet regularly with producers in dairy across all categories. And what they usually ask is, what are other peers of ours doing? What's working in this space? What's being successful? So the goal of the call today is that I'll share some of those experiences of just real-time feedback and what we're hearing in the industry segment. So pleased to be here among the panel and look forward to the discussion.
Thanks, everyone. So the first section we're going to cover is why modernization is accelerating. We'll start with a big picture question. Dairy modernization isn't new by any means, but it definitely feels like the urgency has increased over the last several years, mainly due to consumer demand. So the first question for the panel is, what's driving modernization investments today? And we're going to start with Crystal.
Yeah. So I would say food and beverage producers point us to a few things. There's rising cost, sustainability goals, shortage of skilled workers. Of course, there's the consumer trends around protein-rich foods across many F&B categories like yogurt, ultra-filtered milk, cottage cheese, etc. And then, there is a surge in that consumer demands, which then leads to expansion and that scalability.
Thank you, Crystal. Hugh, from the processor side, what are
Yeah.
you seeing? What are you seeing that makes these modernization efforts so urgent within dairy
Well,
facilities?
well, having worked many years in dairy and dairy facilities across the board, and not just dairy, I mean it's across the whole manufacturing space. The legacy equipment that's there is really bad thing when it comes to the modern technology and AI and where the roadmap for AI is going. Everyone in the plants today are looking for data. We're trying to empower people on the plant floor. So we're trying to push data from the top level down to the plant floor and from the plant floor to be able to receive data up. So you have for one part of it, you have the old legacy plants that, the mindset would be if it works, don't touch it. It doesn't make sense to go near it. There's a huge capital cost and outlay to try and put that together. But at the same time, if they don't catch up with the train that's flying by and it's coming at a fast pace, you're going to miss that wave, and it's going to be very expensive for people. Now you bring into that the way AI is moving into the industry and the technologies that are coming at everyone. I know Crystal's very aware of it, and so is Todd. The AI side of things is driving the collection of data, which is really important. But if you can't get it off the plant floor, it's going to cause you major issues. And again, you have people bringing up, SaaS model systems and different software packages, and then the equipment down on the plant floor, which really causes an issue. So what adds on to that, and it's kind of a rippling effect, is the labor side of things. Um, we want to automate. We want to get away from the manual side of doing things. So if you look at the end of the lines and stuff, we're putting more robots in. We're putting cobots in for palletizing where you may not have the space. People are putting palletizers in where you may have had 4 to 5 people on a shift palletizing a line. You're putting in an automatic palletizer to do the job of where you had 20 people across 4 shifts doing it. So there's a cost. You're trying to reduce the cost in the plant. You're trying to increase the downtime that's there. But if you don't have data, you don't know where to look. And I think one of the sore points, and we'll discuss this later on, is people want the need for data, and when they really get the data, they don't realize how bad it really was. So
Hmm.
data actually can be a very sore point, but it actually points you in the right path. And when the right people are taking on this approach, I mean, once you get the data in your hands, it allows you then to streamline the approach of how you're going to optimize. And that's the need for modernization in plants. A lot of people don't really know where to focus the time and efforts, but the data gives them a real clear visual of where they want to put their mindset and put their dollars to it. So that at the end of the day, you're looking to reduce shrink, especially in a manufacturing plant. You're taking in raw ingredients, your finished product going out, and you're trying to figure out and itemize and modernize where that is.
Interesting. Um, Todd, when companies start addressing these pressures that he was talking about, where does automation usually enter the conversation?
Yeah, automation is an enabler, and really, I think Crystal summarized the business challenges well, and Hugh summarized the realities that face why automation is entering fairly early in the process, and it's born out of necessity in light of those challenges that Crystal shared. The producers we meet with are essentially saying we just can't keep doing things the same way as we always done and expect different outcomes. We have to be open to new possibilities. We happen to be open to what else is out there on the technology horizon. Like if it's workforce or labor, which is highlighted, and nearly everyone struggles with that. Then if we say that resources are scarce or they're difficult to hire and retain, then we tend to say, well, how can we leverage automation? And it could be like robotics, like you mentioned, cobots, even AMRs, autonomous mobile robots for material movement to address the workforce challenge, or even just core automation on the packaging side, let's say, to do fundamental repetitive tasks that free up the workers that we do have to do higher level value add tasks. If yield or efficiency are the challenge, then like Hugh referenced, how do we get better visibility from the data that we have and turn it into actual information, not just data, to identify, hey, where are the challenges, where are the bottlenecks, and then from the AI perspective, let's say, how do we learn from that and adjust in real time before we scrap or waste a lot of product? Or, so we're really trying to drive higher yield, higher effective output. So ultimately, on the automation conversation, we're exploring the same question, which is how can we enable that to help producers do more with less? That's the ultimate question.
Very good. Just as a follow-up to all that, I don't think any dairy company wants to think that they never thought of modernization, but it seems like the heat's been turned up a bit. So something to think about, are companies approaching modernization differently today than they were 5 or even 10 years ago? Todd, could you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, definitely with a higher sense of urgency than ever. And it's really a result of meeting that business demand that was highlighted earlier, that need to drive higher effective output. And the easy answer is, of course, build new capacity, throw more money and resources at it. But the large majority of our dairy clients don't have the luxury to just do greenfields every time there's a change in demand. You have to, and it could be budgetary constraint, of course, but more likely it's the time that it takes to do new capacity. You basically are being driven to affect new output now in a short period of time. And so the likely approach, rather than new capacity, is improve what you already have. In fact, we get a question a lot about justification of new capacity. It's an internal debate within our dairy clients of, why build new if existing facilities are only operating at 50 or 60% efficiency, let's say. And so there's nearly always opportunity to improve what you currently have and deliver, relatively large, quick payback.
Yeah.
And so that's where modernization projects are, a most obvious and effective way of approaching this. So I think more and more the conversation is shifting towards, we've got to improve the existing assets before we consider building new. So let's at least consider that first.
Great.
Great, great. Hugh, as a processor, are you looking at modernization any differently today than you were, say, 5 or 10 years ago?
Well, the facility, the place where I'm currently working at Cayuga, and we've a building across the road, an ingredients building, which is probably 12 to 14 years old. There's plenty of areas in the last 12 to 14 years, and within that facility, there's a huge area for modernizing it. The current place is that this plant, we're still only 5 months into opening up this pretty large consumer products facility. And even at that, there's areas for growth and change and improvement. The technologies are changing on a weekly, monthly basis. The software platforms are changing weekly and monthly. There's huge ways to optimize what people have today. And at the end of the day, just like us, we're trying to get throughput, and we're trying to increase the throughput of the plant and the facility. Everyone out there is trying to do that. They're also trying to reduce the OpEx expenditure and the costs. So you're trying to reduce shrink. Technology has come a long, long way in the last, I would say, 5 years, and that really where, if people don't modernize the old legacy systems of what they have today, they're going to be so far behind. But in order to do that in the modern day world, you're talking about putting an infrastructure in place that's able to hold the information and withstand the technologies that are going in. You can't just buy a piece of technology and think that it's going to slap into the system. That just doesn't work. So you have to build, and for my recommendation to a lot of people out there, you need to segregate IT from OT. You need to make sure that the OT infrastructure is robust enough to withstand the data that's coming forth. And then when you have companies like Tetra Pak and Rockwell that are coming in to try and install their systems on it, if you don't have that infrastructure, it's like trying to build a house without the foundation. It'll crumble. So there's a lot that has to be done ahead of time. Again, that all costs dollars and costs, and it's kind of a rippling effect because you can't get the labor. There's some very large, especially here in the United States and even here in upstate New York, when you have the likes of Micron coming in, and they're going to spend 100 billion over the next 10, 20 years in a brand new facility, probably half an hour from here. You have to really take a look at your labor force. You have to take a look at where you really need it, figure out where you're going to optimize the labor that you have today on site, and where you can actually automate and reduce some of that. You put some robots in on the end of a line. You're not worried about when someone's gone on vacation. You're not worried about when someone wants to go off for a break and take a time. They just keep going.
Mm,
Okay, there's a cost associated with that. And then when you look at the efficiency of the lines, you're trying to optimize, increase the OEE, reduce the downtime, give yourself more production time on the line, of which then we can send our salespeople off to go and sell it. So putting dedicated workforces or automation systems in order to fix the tasks, fix the issues at hand, and then giving you a better OEE gives you more throughput in the plant. It's somewhat a rippling effect, but you need to have dedicated teams to go and do it.
interesting. Crystal, from your experience, have you seen a change in approach towards modernization in the last 5 years or so?
Yeah. So like just a quick add there, even in the last 2 years, right? So if we think about what we've seen with technology and AI and all of that, right? And how things are rapidly developing across that those areas. So even we heard just even yesterday is that they're coming to the table to ask us, how can we help move them into a smart factory? What are we seeing? What are new technologies, right? So they're coming to us as expertise. And then even for baselining their own performance in comparison to others in the market, right? So and those best practices or things that they can kind of make sure that they're keeping up with, that they're not being left behind, left in the dust, so to speak. So
Great, thank you. So on to section two, where are processors investing? One thing that's interesting is modernization can mean many different things depending on the facility. So where are companies actually starting? So first question is, what are the highest impact modernization opportunities right now? Hugh, could you start us off there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think people want to actually try and look at the yields across their, depending on what the process is, especially from a dairy standpoint, you're trying to optimize separators, you're trying to optimize your membranes, your UFs across the board and get the best yield out of those systems. So is there means to automate this a little bit more, be a little bit more stringent? It does require, it depends on the skill set that you have within your workforce or on your full-time staff. If not, you're relying heavily on the likes of companies like Tetra Pak and other process integration companies to come out there and try and help you to do some optimization on it. I think maintenance and reliability is very, very important because some people, a lot of different companies out there forget that. You can put in the highest technology equipment that you like, and no matter what it is, if you don't have critical spare parts, you don't have a reliable maintenance strategy and PM strategy, that equipment's going to keep running. And then as soon as you hit, it's going to take you down for not just a normal half a day shutdown or 2 days. You're going to go down for a week. So, I think Rockwell do a good job with a parts management agreement that gives the companies like ourselves here at Cayuga the ability to put in a little capital outlay up front, gives us the ability to have the parts on site. There's a lot of different companies out there that don't want to do that, but I think end users like ourselves and other dairy companies out there would much more appreciate to be able to go ahead and have bigger partnerships with the large alliance of companies, the Tetra Paks, you name it, that's out there that will come in and then we can pay a fee. There's no problem with paying the fee because we want to invest our money in modernizing, not for all the spare parts that are just going to sit on the shelf. Um, that's another one. Operations and real-time visibility. I think that's one of the key where they really need to do it. Grabbing the data, understanding what's there. It might be really sore out of the gate to understanding um, or getting a real visibility of what the data really is and knowing that it's not as good as you thought it may be. It's going to be a sore point. But until you have that, you really don't know where to focus. And then like saving, automation, the savings and automation. Sometimes it's hard to justify the ROI in an automation or especially a software investment. Because there's anyone out there that's going to try and sell software. So whether you put
Mm,
in an OE monitoring system, whether it's a Red Zone or a Zarpack, or you use the likes of Ignition or Rockwell's OE monitoring system, there's many different options out there. But at the end of the day, to try and justify, okay, Am I really going to get it? You're trying to go to your CFO, you're trying to go to the COO, and you're trying to say, hey, I've got an investment, the software is going to cost me 100,000. They're going to, what am I going to get to it, and when is the ROI? But if the
Yes.
plants don't embrace the software, it goes nowhere. Doesn't matter what the likes of Hugh Roddy says. And I've had this many a time over different software applications. Hey, you really need this. This is why we need it. This is what I believe. This is what the investment is, and this is what I believe the ROI is. But if the plant floor don't embrace the solution, it goes nowhere. They have to buy into it. They have to be the owners of it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Hugh. So, Todd, what's your take on this? The highest impact modernization opportunities right now.
Yeah, and I touched on this earlier, and I'll riff a little on what Hugh said about yield because I think we're seeing tremendous opportunities in that. Nearly everyone wants to talk about the options and what's working and just optimizing yield or improving efficiency. And most of the time, it's cases where even just a very small percentage point of improvement, or even fractions of percentage points in some cases, especially in more process centric, higher production cost categories of dairy, even those smaller incremental gains can deliver compelling returns. And so we're definitely seeing that. Continuing to piggyback on what Hugh said about data and process visibility, that's one of the things that we hear consistently. We actually produce a report annually called the State of Smart Manufacturing report, and we survey about 1,500 producers. And the one that was just released a couple of weeks ago, one data point in that was that only 43% of the people surveyed said that they felt they were using data effectively to deliver change in the organization. And of course, that means nearly 60% feel like they're not delivering, effective results from the data they have. So the ability to kind of aggregate that information, those higher level systems, whether they be yield, whether they be predictive maintenance, any of those types of applications, they're only as good as the data that serves them. So what we have seen a lot of jumping off points in modernization is just putting a foundation in place. In many cases, like the realities that Hugh shared earlier about just disparate systems or multiple pieces of equipment or vendors or vintages over time, they're just not standardized, either from the network layer, from the data structure and model layer. So we spend a fair amount of time in the modernization project conversation about just connecting, standardizing, and putting together an infrastructure that will support whatever of those types of higher end applications that you want to do. We even refer to it as like a digital ready infrastructure, or more recently, a digital backbone. And that backbone then can enable whatever the production initiative that you're looking to accomplish. And we're doing that, in fact, right now across a dairy co-op that's spanning multiple facilities. But that's their starting point, right? They can't even grasp these yield optimization things until basically the underlying, as Hugh said, the foundation of the house will support it. So
Yeah.
I think that's what we're seeing a lot of conversation around right now.
And if I can piggyback on your comment, Todd, I mean, the data as such, there's so many companies out there offering you all sorts of devices that you can, smart devices to bring into the plant floor, collect data. And you can collect a lot of data from the plant floor, the bit of stuff that you have connected, any new technologies that come in, and you can put sensors and Wi-Fi sensors in, you collect the data. At the end of the day, it's just data in a database. If you don't have someone on your staff that can actually run the analytics on it or knows what to do with the data, all it is data in a database. And it's pointless. You have to have systems and software systems where it's a data ready system, and it gives people the data in a rich, some sort of usable format. Otherwise, you're pointless. You're spending money for no reason. Now, there is AI tools out there that can help you, that can take that data and streamline the data and give it to you in 20 different ways. That's one of the real powerful uses of AI today. But I just wanted to, because at the end of the day, I wanted to piggyback on your thoughts, Todd, and I agree with them. Again.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Crystal, what's your take on the highest impact modernization opportunities today?
Yeah, so sometimes we're seeing that there's like an under estimation of like the impact on what modernization can do. And then it seems like there's a kind of a recipe for that successful journey. And yes, pun intended. And so, if you think about, operations can become more adaptive, precise, and predictive. But some of the points that we mentioned a little bit earlier as well is around that change management lens. And some of those ingredients could be that need for buy-in, those, having the right decision makers to invest in the solutions. What is that value add? Sometimes, again, intangible ROIs, having that single source of truth across different departments and across the factory. And then that cross-functional alignment. So if we think about IT, OT, and that alignment, sometimes there's difficulties there. Even local management or CapEx projects versus like having a corporate or global vision, aren't aligned as well or need to be. And then as we're seeing with like scalability and adoption, so you might start in one line and then expand that to multi lines, multi facilities. Being able to visualize it and see right across the board, is a big one. And there's just so many ways that it could be impactful.
Great. Thank you. As a follow-up, where are organizations seeing the fastest ROI on their modernization efforts? Hugh, could you take that one?
Yeah,
Start us off, I should say.
collecting of data, to be honest. I mean, I think it's very important. Getting the tools, software systems in place to get data real time to the plant floor. And then because putting data on the plant floor really empowers your staff and your employees. All the big companies out there, the Rockwells, the Tetras, you name them, they've got many different tools and software systems that can come in and help. If you've got a really strong automation department in terms of a skill set, you can have people then that can take the current systems that are there and help deploy them and move dashboards. And I'm big into simplistic displays on the floor, simplistic KPIs on the floor for the operators across the filling lines, the end of line packaging, give people access to the data, and listen to your operators on the plant floor. Very, very important. But really, putting software systems and dashboards in place and getting data down and all the way back up to the top is probably the keyest or the most important opportunity. It might be scary with the results that you see and what you get back, but it really gives you a roadmap to where you really need to spend the money and focus.
Thank you. Thank you, Hugh. Todd, could you add to that? In regards to where processors are seeing the fastest ROI in their automation modernization efforts?
Yeah, we preach it has to drive one of those outcomes that are one of the challenges that Crystal highlighted earlier in the call. And number one, either workforce or production, right? If it's not affecting one of those two, there's a strong temptation to chase technology sometimes, or certainly chase some of these leading edge buzzwords like, hey, let's do an AI project, or let's do some augmented reality or something. Let's put in cobots, whatever it may be. And that's the wrong way of thinking about it, right? You don't want to go, technology should not be in search of a business need. It should be the other way around. And so we say, hey, if first ROI, and we actually, kind of rack and stack the priorities based on quickest time to value, shortest financial output, right? And do a little bit of a bubble chart analysis to say, hey, the ones that will affect the highest level of business need, focus on that first. They're also usually shorter time of projects, and so they deliver value quicker. They build momentum inside the organization. They get the attention, of course, of the enterprise leaders and financial purse string holders, right? That okay, things are you keep getting funds for things that are driving, effective business outcomes. So think of it in that terms, not a technology chase.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree. I think it's important for people and end users like ourselves to know that, not one solution, a solution provider can provide a lot of different solutions within your plant floor. I don't feel that it's usually the right way to go to put all your eggs in one basket. I think you need to use the power and the best of what the large companies and all these companies are out there and figure out what fits your current infrastructure, what you have. So just choosing, I agree with the mindset, choosing a technology over what the need is, figure out what you want and then figure out where to go and get it, and look at the end solution. And you need to be very careful with AI. You can't put your sole trust in what the AI is. You need to have the proper people that can actually critique the results of what it brings back, and don't just assume that it's correct. Remember,
Mm.
AI out there, AI is designed to give you the answers of what you want. It can make some things really quick and easy, but if you don't have the ability to go back and double check and critique what you've been fed back, you're in for a big surprise, to be honest. And it's a huge
Okay.
one.
Thanks, you. And
Hey,
Crystal, would you
Matt.
like to add something in regards to, where organizations are seeing the fastest ROI?
Yeah. So just to piggyback, we're hearing a lot about data and the data analysis. Some areas just to kind of highlight that maybe we haven't talked about were like troubleshooting. So when you do have a problem, how can you pinpoint or know and, get to it quicker versus like, days or of like reports and all of that and trying to backtrack or maybe make assumptions, right? That, there's a problem area. And so, yep, having that data, it can help in predictive maintenance. If a motor is going to go down or when to change a membrane and other things. So it could be around quality or sampling as well, and just kind of that improvement to help with those losses or kind of understanding that. And yeah, I would just say the cloud's the limit.
All right. Okay. We're going to move on now to section 3, and we're going to talk about the old way versus the modern way. Um, I think we want to talk about hearing practical examples of how operations have changed over time. With that in mind, the next question is, are there certain dairy categories more in need of modernization than others? And we're thinking product categories here. So, Hugh, if you could
Yeah.
start off the conversation in regards to yogurt and milk processing.
Yeah, I think fluid milk really is in a high need across the board. Um, I'm not going to speak about the current facility I'm in, but my previous facilities and what I've been to over my last, I'd say, 15 years. There's legacy equipment in the plant that's aging. It's labor intensive operations. You know, people need to invest on that side of it. It's very, very important. They're gonna fall behind and actually declining consumption in certain categories. When you look at the other end of the spectrum in terms of protein and protein drinks, there's a huge drive for lactose whey protein, milk protein concentrate, and the drive across the board. The market, as we know, has been led by one or two main suppliers. There's a lot of different categories coming out to try and compete with them in terms of the ready to drink protein drinks. And people are looking for low calories, high protein, lactose free, sugar free as much as they can get. And that's driving a huge demand in the workplace and within the industry for more options, less expensive options. In order to do that, companies need to try be able to, existing companies, if they don't have the capital outlay and infrastructure, need to optimize the systems that they currently have. So it might be putting in some new equipment, more modern equipment, putting in faster fillers. Granted, to try and do that within a facility, you don't really want to stop the current production that you have, but you have to be able to. You can get a space to put another filler in, get a higher speed of piece of equipment put in, and then come back and upgrade the other one and take the old one out. Um, Cost of capital is not cheap today. The cost of labor is not cheap. Um, and then making sure you have the right teams of people on the staff. You need to be able to manage it yourself. It doesn't matter whether you bring in a Tetra Pak or a Rockwell and they have thousands and thousands of people. You need to have your own project managers on your staff. You need to be able to manage the projects and the budgets. You need to have the engineering staff that are able to back it up. Because at the end of the day, these partners are going to want to get out of your plant and your facility, but then the huge drive for training across the board. Because when you put in newer technologies, a lot of the operators that have been there for years, you have to train these people. And that requires a lot of time, effort, and OPEX expenditure to get them trained. And so when you look at those big projects also, you want to be thinking ahead of time. What's the teams that are going to run this new equipment that are going to come in? I should be proactive, not waiting for when commissioning starts to start training these people. You want to use the power of and the relationship you have with your big suppliers and go get these operators trained well ahead of time. If you need to staff up, you want to be looking at staffing probably 6 to 12 months in advance of the commissioning starting, not when the system's going to be in service and up and running.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Crystal, from your perspective and kind of a broader category comparison, you see when the milk is delivered to the plant until it comes out the door in the different forms of dairy products. Could you speak to this modernization issue and from that angle?
Yeah, yeah, sounds good. On the like equipment side, let's just say if we're talking about cheese or like cottage cheese is more in demand. So, moving from, open vats to enclosed, which would help optimize on yield, the production, the cleaning time since it's enclosed versus having things that are manual. Like we spoke about the robotics, kind of on that packaging side. So if we think about 40-pound blocks of cheese and that packaging part where the bag is then puffed out automatically, the cheese block gets slided in, it seals it, the conveyor moves, weighs it, and then a robot is then lifting and moving it conveniently stacked in a pallet. And so, those are some of the things. And then I would say around being, hashtag AI ready. We would say, around consistency requirements. So we were kind of talking about that standardization from the raw milk suppliers, that milk composition, the quality, any of the tolerances that might need to be seen. There's, ways to be more predictive or, help with that around cleaning in general. That kind of spans across a lot of categories. Having a golden CIP, which one is optimized and being able to then replicate that in other areas. And then, kind of lastly around, cheese optimization, whether that's on the like product itself around moisture and pH and other things. So those are just to kind of name a few.
Great, thank you. Todd, can you speak from an automation standpoint on this?
Yeah, and from an automation standpoint, really, it's fairly consistent across whatever category, is if like as referenced by Hugh, protein is definitely having a moment. There's different categories that will get hot and cold over time, and yet the core infrastructure pieces or the parts that automation serves in this case, whether it be on the process side or the discrete side, the still consistent need referenced earlier of like being able to do more with less inherently in the technology or in the product itself never goes away, right? We have to basically make the job of the dairy processor easier to do your day jobs, right? To produce product rather than integrate different pieces of hardware and software together. So whether it be a core automation component or technology from Rockwell or one of the other many partners in the market, Hugh named it, a number of them on the software side, we have to coexist. We have to basically self-integrate or be open to protocols and standards so that it's not a black box proprietary solution, right? So that you can better enable that activity regardless of what category it's in, whichever one is hot at the moment, right? The core underlying infrastructure has to remain the same. That ability to, again, aggregate data easily, contextualize it. So as Hugh said, the person requesting the information, it's meaningful to them. It's not just some register number or tag name in a database. It means something to their practical job, role, or persona. More and more, I would say, with the thing that we're asking to weigh in on is the cybersecurity piece, right? So all of that has to be kind of in a framework that protects data, protects the brand, so that you're not vulnerable to outside attack. So again, regardless of the category, a lot of the core infrastructure and foundational pieces remain the same.
Great, great. We're talking about so much advanced technology that's available. so much so much data that's available to measure. Maybe if we could drill down a little bit as it pertains to downtime, downtime in the plant, because, Hugh, you have mentioned, the need for skilled labor, and maybe there's a lag time between everything that's available and, the people manning the plants. So could you speak to the issue of downtime itself and
It's
what,
one of the most important things on the end of a line. And I've many use cases that we've actually done, and we've probably created a plant within a plant because of downtime data at your fingertips. Um, Most of the companies out there do a very good job. And I'll give you an example. So let's say a line is running at, and I'm going to give you an idea. I won't use the same numbers, but one line I had worked on before, I was running at around 38% OEE. We put a dedicated work stream of people that literally they woke up every morning, they eat, slept, and bred this one particular line. Their only goal was to take the downtime data that was on that physical line and come up with solutions and options to resolve issues. Anything from misalignment of cartons, capper on a lid of yogurt that wasn't going on properly on a multi-serve cap. We had an operator would do that, come up with a solution to fix it that would keep going down, whether it's in feed of raw materials going into the filler, whether it's a case packer, whether it's a capper, whether it's a palletizer, have dedicated teams to go after that line. We turn that line around by literally, because you'll have top five downtime issues. You have people going after, this is taking you down for like 2 hours over the course of a 24-hour run. All of a sudden, you've got one that's an hour and it's probably got 50 minutes. You're working your way down. When you tackle this big guy, that's a huge chunk of additional production time you've just saved yourself. Now you've got a new set of top fives, but they're much smaller numbers. By reducing the data, by using that data to reduce the downtime on the floor and have a dedicated teams, we literally produced a filling line capacity within a filling line. You took something that was under 35 to 38, now you're up in the 70 to 80% OEE. Now you can go after your sales team, hey, go sell more product and
okay.
give us the additional capacity. That's really, so if you're going to put a software system in and you're looking at data across the board, okay, yes, sustainability, energy consumption and reduction, very, very important. If a plant really wants to take a look at it, look at their filling and, okay, when you've got your process side, but then you get your batch tanks, your aseptic tanks, whatever your process is, now you have a sort of a clean break. You're going your filler and packaging. That's where you'll get the most bang for the buck, to be honest.
Thank you. Thank you. We want to leave a little time for Q&A, so we're going to move to section 4 of this presentation. We're going to talk about implementation realities. You know, as I said earlier, no dairy processing company wants to think that they are not modern or haven't wanted to modernize however many years ago. But again, the heat seems to have been turned on. So modernization sounds exciting in theory, but the implementation is where companies encounter the real operational and financial realities. So with that in mind, what surprises companies most once projects actually begin? And maybe we can start from the supplier end. Todd, would you like to start us off on that?
Yeah, I would say, one of the things, of course, is trying to be better predictive about how things are going to operate when you physically deploy them. And so you want to reduce the surprises, right, in either a startup or commissioning or any kind of project that you undertake. And so what we have seen a broad growth in recent years, and this has been around for a long time, but we've seen I would say, a exponential growth in certainly the last 2 to 3 years is around the use of digital twin or emulation types of tools to better predict how a new system might perform, where bottlenecks might be, what kind of constraints you might have. And system integrators and engineering firms have been using these tools for many years, but we're starting to see a lot more interest from the end user side, the processes themselves, about either trying to reduce those surprises, as you say, Matt, to or to mitigate the damage that might be done when you don't, properly plan for them. And understanding not only for new capacity, but understanding how current lines are operating, the ability to, move things around, maybe lay out production lines a little bit differently, maybe alter processes. There's a lot of complex parameters that go into that. Just the ability to be able to model that either in a virtual environment before physically deploying them. There's been a huge growth there. And it's not only on the packaging side, it's even moving over into the process side to do predictive control, to be able to better anticipate outputs, but right, because no one can fully know exactly how something's going to operate, but being able to anticipate, prepare for it as much in advance is become almost a de facto now for a new project.
Yeah.
Thank you, Todd. Crystal, from your perspective, what surprises companies most when projects actually begin?
Yeah, I think we touched a little bit on it. I would say that like true partnership, around resources, the talent from both sides, the sharing of the data, and being able to, have those insights and for implementation. And then, just sometimes at that local level being more internally aligned of what's happening. We talked about a little bit of that workforce readiness. So around training plans and gaps, because some equipment and lines, they take 1 to 2 years for any given operator to even become an expert or even comfortable. And, just anticipating that roadblocks are inevitable, right? So it doesn't mean that we're not successful. It just, things to kind of plan for. And then that project coordination and that timeline is important too. And sometimes that scope creep or even having to reduce scope is necessary to meet certain deadlines.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And I would probably add to that. I mean, the technology has to evolve with the process and the people. Companies need to invest in not just the technology, they need to invest in the people and the processes before. Because what they'll find out is that um, trying to do a change management is really an awful lot harder than putting in the technology. You realize when you put some new piece of technology or new piece of software in, you then realize, well, hey, we don't have the proper people and skill set to be able to use this, or very very quickly you will realize that the choke points within your process that you have today that will hold this is opening up an eyesore on the back end because either the case packer can't keep up because we put in this new technology. So a lot of upfront engineering and design needs to be done and a lot of different studies. I think what you find as well when you start collecting the data that you realize the tags were wrong, we've inconsistent data coming across the board, we have the wrong instrumentation in certain areas, we're not collecting the right data. It actually opens up some large eyes to what is actually going on. But companies need to invest in not just one, they need to be investing across the board. And people are very important to that. Automation just can't fill all the gaps for the most part, definitely not within the dairy industry. We're finding that here on a brand new facility we're starting up. You know, there probably
Hmm.
should have been a lot more training and investment done up front to the technologies that we've put into the facility today. And it's
Okay.
pretty robust.
Okay. Thank you, Hugh. Well, to tie this up on the $64,000 question or the $1 billion question or somewhere in between, what advice would you give someone beginning a modernization effort of a dairy plant today? Uh, Crystal, you want to start off with that?
Yeah. So I would say, you're saying we're beginning, right? So I would start small. You have to kind of build trust, have to come in, have resilience, be willing to go on that journey, and obviously bring others along for that. Coming up and setting priorities, and then planning for those short and long-term goals.
Great. Great. Uh, Todd, would like to give your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I
Advice?
couldn't agree more on the start small guidance from Crystal. But I would even parse that out a little bit and say start, right? The old saying of best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, second best time is today. Is that I think we see a lot of producers just unfortunately waiting a little bit too long, and then the project becomes overwhelming, or at least the idea of modernizing becomes overwhelming. So starting or even starting small can just be those foundational pieces, like I mentioned earlier. Connecting assets together seems like a very low-hanging fruit thing to place to start. Just connect the assets together in some kind of common network protocol layer. Um, Obviously, do the quickest time to value analysis that I referenced earlier as well. And then don't underestimate it. I mean, I think you said it well about the whole organizational change management piece. You know your culture, you know your resources and organization. Do it at a rate that the environment itself can absorb it. And if you do that, I think it's a lot easier to carve the big picture down into some smaller, executionable steps that you can absorb at your own speed.
Thank you. And Hugh, from the processor
Yeah.
perspective, what advice would you give someone in the
Get,
in the
get the
initial stages?
get the operations teams involved early in the early design. Don't just be trying to design from an engineering management, executive management perspective. The operators are the ones that are running the systems. They're the people that you want to empower on the plant floor. You need to hear from them. You need to understand how they run the systems today and get them involved. Even if it's newer technology, get them involved early and focus just as much on the people as you will on the technology that you want to put in. And then put a roadmap together. Make sure you're putting a roadmap together, not just a bunch of projects. Understand the outcome at the end of the day or what you want to achieve and build a roadmap to that. That will end up building the projects, and then you'll have your stream, your people stream, your technology stream, and then your engineering and management and drawing streams, and they all have to coexist together.
Great, great. Well, really interesting stuff. We do have a couple of questions. I'm seeing AI taking up a lot of those a lot of those questions. AI is on the mind. So I'd like all of you to weigh in a little bit on that. Um, Boy, how does AI affect, downtime, yield? Can you give a synopsis
Yeah,
on AI and plant modernization?
if I may answer that one, I think need to use, you can use AI to very quickly streamline and do analytical of the data itself, right? And it can throw out many different forms very, very quickly and reduce an awful lot of time, effort, and labor to do that. That's one real powerful use of the AI, and that's whether you're using Copilot, Claude, ChatGPT, or any of the different systems down there. You can save an awful lot of time within a manufacturing plant, whether you're trying to put presentations together for or SOPs on the plant floor, or putting operating procedures together, or training manuals together. And AI is a fabulous way to try and sped fast that whole thing and reduce a lot of time to do the engineering studies, the capacity studies, the utility studies that you need to do. And I'm talking mainly about a manufacturing facility and where throughputs, the requirement for throughput is forever increasing. The demand on the industry is forever increasing. You need to be able to optimize what you have today with the tools you have today, because the pot of gold of investment only goes so deep, and people are only willing to invest. You want to take what you have today and then optimize it. So AI has its place, but as I said earlier on, you need to be very careful about the data that it throws back and not
Okay,
just take it for its word.
thank you. Todd, anything to add on AI and plant modernization?
Yeah, it's a hot topic. Obviously, we all hear it every day. Our smart manufacturing report that I referenced earlier, I think 83% of our respondents said they're either doing it currently in some capacity or they're exploring it in the coming 12 months. We always say, keep it in context of what you're trying to accomplish. Very simply, we say it could be used on the design, operate, or maintain side. On the design side, it could be used to generate code or understand code. It's great at producing code generation for PLCs, let's say. Um, Similar with the digital twin example I referenced earlier. On the operate side, it's how do I understand what's currently happening with the line, identifying downtime analysis like you referenced earlier, OEE, understanding micro stops, bottlenecks, constraints, any of those types of things. And then finally on the maintain side, better predicting what's happening. It could be condition-based monitoring to do pattern recognition for something that may be about to fail in the future, or just adjusting in real time to do what we call agentic AI to then not only identify the problem or the pattern, but take action on it. As you said, couldn't agree more. Beware of hallucinations, right? Things that are false information, but that's learned through tribal knowledge and through experience.
Okay. Crystal, would you like to add to this? AI and plant modernization. It's a big topic, of course.
Yeah, it lends itself towards what we've been talking about with data. So if we think about, that process, you might need 1 to 2 years of good, data points, events, transactions and such. So collecting all that data, being able to prepare that data that makes sense and simplify it, having a more of a unified and an architecture around that, whether that's end to end. Doesn't have to be one person's equipment, right? And then being able to take those data points, and then looking to see, okay, are you ready? Do you have missing information? Are those parameters correlating across your recipe and what you're looking for that optimization? And then, understanding, okay, are you ready? What does that traceability look like? Are there gaps? And then moving into that modeling phase where we're going to say, depending on what you want to, achieve, if it's an AI agent or somehow optimizing your recipe, for instance, then we would be able to continuously take that data, model it, kind of revisit. We can't just like do it one and done, and look at, how then we can optimize and use that. And then, hopefully with that, along the way with, both sides being experts on that product, on the end user side, but then let's say on our side, being able to come and say, okay, we're validating and this is accurate and this is information that makes sense. Maybe it validates what the end user is already seeing in their data and their Power BI and such. So, but yeah, that's kind of I would say the journey or the plan to get there and utilize AI in an efficient and smart way.
Good. Great. Great. Well, from my experience, every dairy industry event I've attended in the last few years, the message comes in loud and clear that consumer demand and the need for plant modernization, it's an urgent matter, and you all have really added a lot to this conversation, and I appreciate it. I want to thank our panelists for sharing your where the rubber meets the road experience and your insights.
Mhm.
And I want to thank everyone for joining us for another FPSA Webinar Wednesday. I want to note that this recording is available on FPSA Connect for members, and I want to encourage people to participate in upcoming webinars. And there's a couple I'd like to note. A week from today, June 10th, we'll have a webinar on maximizing operational performance, aligning equipment, processes, and people. And then on June 24th, that's going to feature Dave Gregory of Weber Incorporated. On June 24th, the topic will be, is freeze drying the right fit? How to evaluate trade-offs before you scale. So again, thanks to the panelists and thanks for everyone who tuned